COVID vaccines have been a game changer.
While the vaccines provide strong protection for the vaccinated, we read about and hear about and we see the stories of hospitalized people.
So these are the latest pictures we have of the Prime Minister heading for his booster jab. The government are saying that the booster vaccination programme is the best line of defence.
By the end of October, everyone 12 or older on a plane or train within Canada should be fully vaccinated.
This is a pandemic of the unvaccinated.
To bring this pandemic to an end, a large share of the world needs to be immune to the virus. The safest way to achieve this is with a vaccine. Globally, 9.53 billion COVID-19 vaccine doses have been administered so far. 59.4% of the global population has received at least one dose of the vaccine, while 50.5% of the population has been fully vaccinated against COVID. In countries like the UAE, Portugal, Cuba, and Chile, more than 90% of the population has had the first dose, whereas in countries like Nigeria, this number is just 5.5%. China has administered 2.91 billion doses so far, and the US has administered 521 million doses. But now, take a look at this graph. It shows vaccines administered per 100 people based on the income group. We can easily see the colossal difference between the high-income and low-income groups. About 72% of shots that have gone into arms worldwide have been administered in high and upper-middle-income countries. Only 1% of doses have been administered in low-income countries. 76% of people in North America have had at least a single vaccine shot. This number is 66% for Europe, but for Africa, this number is just 16%. The vaccines are also surrounded with controversies thanks to vaccine skepticism.
Some carried signs critical of vaccines which have proved to be highly effective against the coronavirus. Others were worried about Belgium making it compulsory for health workers to be vaccinated.
And this is about the breadth of the federal government's reach into your lives. Whether or not the federal government can mandate medical procedures such as a vaccine on you.
Few people think vaccines aren't well researched and might contain harmful substances. Some people are even taking horse dewormers instead of vaccines. To understand how the pandemic is evolving, it's crucial to know how death rates from COVID-19 are affected by vaccination status. So do vaccines actually prevent deaths? And how well do COVID vaccines work in preventing deaths? The death rate is a key metric that can accurately show us how effective vaccines are against severe forms of the disease. It is essential to look at death rates by vaccination status rather than the absolute number of deaths among vaccinated and unvaccinated people. Why? During a pandemic, you might see headlines like, "Half of those who died from the virus were vaccinated." It would be wrong to draw any conclusions about whether the vaccines are protecting people from the virus based on this headline. The headline is not providing enough information to draw any conclusions. Imagine we live in a place with a population of 60 people. Then we learn new info. We learned that 10 people died, and we learned that 50% of them were vaccinated. The newspaper may run the headline, "Half of those who died from the virus were vaccinated." But this headline does not tell us anything about whether the vaccine is protecting people or not. To be able to say anything, we also need to know about those who did not die. We need to know how many people in this population were vaccinated and how many were not vaccinated. Now we have all the information we need and can calculate death rates. Of 10 unvaccinated people, 5 died, therefore the death rate among the unvaccinated is 50%. Of 50 vaccinated people, 5 died, therefore the death rate among the vaccinated is 10%. We therefore see that the death rate among the vaccinated is 5 times lower than among the unvaccinated. In the example, I invented numbers to make it simple to calculate the death rates. But the same logic applies also in the current COVID-19 pandemic. Comparisons of the absolute numbers, as some headlines do, is making a mistake that's known in statistics as a base rate fallacy. It ignores the fact that one group is much larger than the other. It's important to avoid this mistake as, in more and more countries, the number of people who are vaccinated against COVID-19 is much larger than the number of people who are unvaccinated. This example was illustrating how to think about these statistics in a hypothetical case. In this video, I'm going to be talking about the official mortality data by vaccination status published by the United States, England, and Switzerland. Let's start with Switzerland. Switzerland has fully vaccinated 67.3% of its population, mostly with the mRNA vaccines produced by Pfizer and Moderna. This chart presents the COVID-19 death rate among unvaccinated people and among fully vaccinated people. We can see the stark difference between the death rates of both groups. Let's look at England now. England has fully vaccinated 70.9% of its population, mostly with the vaccines produced by AstraZeneca and Pfizer. Again, from this chart we can see the difference in the death rate between unvaccinated people and fully vaccinated people. The United States has fully vaccinated 62.2% of its population, mostly with the mRNA vaccines produced by Pfizer and Moderna. Mortality data by vaccination status is published by the US CDC. The data provided by the US CDC also shows the mortality rate based on different vaccines. From this graph, we can see that the patients fully vaccinated with Pfizer have the least mortality rate. However, the mortality rates among different vaccines differ very minutely. Individuals that have been vaccinated are not the individuals that are being hospitalized. This graph shows the weekly hospital admission rates per 100,000 people in 5 American states. 86% of the hospitalized patients in Mississippi are unvaccinated, and this number is 81% for Montana. On a national level, the hospitalization picture is incomplete, as not all states publicly track patient vaccination status, and those that do aren't always consistent with each other and therefore can't be compared side by side. A report from the Texas Department of State Health Services found that unvaccinated people were 40 times as likely to die of COVID as those fully vaccinated. In New York, which was one of the first states to get slammed by the Omicron wave, both vaccinated and unvaccinated have seen an uptick in serious COVID-19 cases, but the gap in hospitalization rates between the two groups is effectively widening. Before mid-November, unvaccinated New Yorkers were hospitalized for COVID-19 at about 10 times the rate as their vaccinated neighbors. But since then, they've been about 14 times more likely to wind up in the hospital. The great influx of unvaccinated patients is overwhelming hospitals, which are stretched so thin that they cannot accommodate non-COVID patients that may need emergency care due to a heart attack or stroke or car accident. Recent studies show that immunity from the vaccines wanes over time, which means those who were first in the line to get vaccinated last year may be less protected now than those who got their shots more recently. Booster shots have shown very promising results so far. COVID-19 vaccines are extremely effective, and these vaccines are the only way for us to get out of this pandemic. I've decided to start a new section called Extra Bits at the end of the videos, which is Patreon only. So only Patreon members will get access to this, but since it's the first video in which I'm doing it, so it's gonna be globally available. So the idea for this video came out of my friend who lives in Wisconsin. Her name is Jessica, and she's been really, really ill. So we were talking about how people are so selfish that they don't get vaccinated. Mind you, the vaccination rate in Wisconsin is like 50%. So like 50% of people are unvaccinated. So that's where the idea came from. And the toughest part about creating this video was crunching the numbers, which was really difficult, but I absolutely loved making this. It was really insightful and it was really lovely making this video. See ya.